The storm killed the lights at 9:48 p.m., and by 9:52, my entire life had changed. I remember the exact moment because I just checked my watch, one of those automatic habits from my army days. 2 tours in Afghanistan will wire your brain to track time, to catalog details, to stay aware of your surroundings even when you're supposedly safe in your own home. The thunder had been building for an hour, rolling across the Virginia suburbs like artillery fire at a distance. Brooke was in the living room, supposedly reading some novel her book club had assigned. I'd been in my office finishing up project timelines for a defense contract presentation on Monday when the power cut out with a sudden, definitive click. The house went silent. No hum of the refrigerator, no white noise from the air conditioning. Just the rain hammering against the windows and the occasional crack of thunder. "Preston," Brooke's voice called from downstairs. "Did we lose power?" "Looks like it. I'll grab the flashlights from the basement." I made my way down the stairs in the dark, my hand trailing along the wall I'd painted 3 years ago when we'd moved in. Sage green. Brooke had picked the color, said it was calming. The basement stairs creaked in the familiar places. 2nd step, 7th step, the landing. I found the emergency kit right where it was supposed to be, grabbed 2 flashlights, and started back up. That's when I heard the voice. A man's voice. In my living room. My blood went cold. My hand tightened on the flashlight until I could feel my pulse against the aluminum casing. I hadn't heard the door. I hadn't heard footsteps. Brooke and I were supposed to be alone. For a split second, my mind went to intruder. Home invasion. Threat. My muscles coiled the way they used to in Kandahar when we'd hear movement outside the wire. My breathing slowed, went shallow. My fingers itched for a weapon I wasn't carrying. Then I recognized the voice, and everything got worse. I moved up the stairs without making a sound. 14 years of military training doesn't disappear just because you're wearing sweatpants instead of fatigues. I reached the hallway and pressed myself against the wall, listening. "He'll be asleep by 11. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. Same as always, guys like clockwork. Garrett Webb, my college roommate, best man at my wedding, one of my closest friends for 18 years. Brooke laughed. That soft, intimate laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in months. Maybe longer. He never suspects anything. He's too trusting. It's actually kind of sad. My jaw clenched so hard I heard my teeth grind. "After the closing next month, I'll have enough to finally leave Vanessa," Garrett continued. "The kids will adjust. They always do. Then we can—" "Shh." I could hear the smile in her voice. "Don't talk about later. Let's just enjoy tonight." I stood frozen for exactly 12 seconds. I counted them. Counting is what you do when your brain needs time to process something that doesn't compute, something that rewrites everything you thought you knew about your life. In those 12 seconds, I felt it all. The betrayal, the rage, the humiliation. I felt my muscles coil, felt that combat response that turns a man into something capable of violence. My hands wanted to ball into fists. My jaw wanted to clench so hard I'd crack my own teeth. I wanted to walk into that room and become the thing I'd been trained to be. And for one terrifying moment, I almost did. In Afghanistan, there had been a night. Bad intel, wrong door, civilians instead of combatants. The family had screamed. My finger had been on the trigger. I'd had to make a choice in less than a second about who I was going to be. I made the same choice now. I let the 12 seconds pass, and then I made a decision. Not the decision my muscles wanted. Not the decision my rage was screaming for. A different decision. I retreated silently back down the basement stairs. I pulled out my phone, still had 80% battery, and opened the voice memo app. Then I crept back up and positioned myself in the hallway, just out of sight, and pressed record. 3 full minutes. That's what I got. They talked about meeting times. Tuesdays when Vanessa had book club, Thursday afternoons when I was in late meetings. They talked about the hotel downtown they preferred because the staff was discreet and the parking garage was underground. Garrett made a joke about Christmas, how Vanessa had almost caught them when she'd come home early from her mother's, and he'd had to pretend he'd just stopped by to drop off a gift. I thought I was going to have a heart attack, Brooke giggled. Your face was so pale. You weren't exactly calm yourself. Good thing Vanessa's oblivious. We need to be more careful. I don't want to blow this, not when we're so close. 18 months. They'd been doing this for 18 months. I saved the recording, slipped the phone back into my pocket, and walked into the living room. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness like a blade. I swept it across the couch and watched them freeze. Brooke's hand on Garrett's thigh, their bodies angled toward each other in that unmistakable way. Garrett had his arm draped over the back of the couch, his fingers playing with a strand of her hair. They pulled apart like teenagers caught in a parked car, and for a moment, nobody spoke. Garrett. My voice came out flat, calm, utterly controlled. Even I was surprised by how steady it sounded. Get out of my house, now. He shot up from the couch, hands raised like I was holding a weapon instead of a flashlight. Preston, look man, this isn't, we were just, you have 30 seconds before I physically remove you. Okay. He was backing toward the door, stumbling over the coffee table. Just, let me explain. 25 seconds. Preston. Brooke was crying already, those tears that had always worked on me before. She'd perfected them over 9 years. Please, just let me explain. Garrett, 15 seconds. He scrambled for the door. He didn't even grab his jacket. I heard his car start in the driveway, heard the tires squeal as he backed out too fast, headlights sweeping across the window as he fled into the storm like the coward he was. The front door slammed. The house went quiet again. I turned to face my wife. She looked beautiful, even now. Her dark hair, her green eyes swimming with tears. The woman I'd married. The woman I'd built a life with. The woman I'd thought I knew. She reached for me and I stepped back. Don't touch me. My voice was still calm. I didn't recognize it. Don't speak. We're done. Preston, please, it didn't mean anything. 18 months. I let the words hang there in the dark. The hotel downtown. The courtyard, right? The close call at Christmas? You told me you were at your mother's that weekend. Her face went white in the flashlight beam. How do you? Go to bed. We'll talk in the morning. Preston, please, just let me go to bed. She went. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office with the lights still out, listening to the storm spend itself against the windows, and I made a list. Not of grievances, I didn't need to catalog my pain. A list of actions, steps, a plan. By morning, I had one. Brooke found her suitcase on the front porch at 7 a.m. I'd packed it myself while she slept. Clothes, toiletries, the things she'd need for a few days. Nothing sentimental. Nothing valuable. Just the basics. I was waiting in the kitchen when she came downstairs, still in her pajamas, her face puffy from crying or sleeping or both. She saw the suitcase through the window and turned to look at me. What is this? You have until noon to leave. Preston, you can't just… She moved toward me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. The adjustment of strategy. She'd had all night to figure out her angle. We can work through this. People make mistakes. Marriages survive affairs all the time. We could go to counseling. You've been sleeping with my best friend for 18 months. There is no we anymore. It wasn't 18 months, it was… She stopped, realizing her mistake. You were about to tell me it was shorter? Like that makes it better? The tears started again. It just happened. I was lonely, Preston. You're always working, always traveling for those contracts. You never talk to me about anything real. You come home and you're just… not there. Not emotionally. That's your justification? I didn't communicate enough, so you decided to communicate with Garrett horizontally? She flinched. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and it sounded strange even to me. Hollow. You want to talk about fair? You looked me in the eye for a year and a half and lied. Every day. Every kiss goodbye. Every I love you. Every time you asked how my day was and pretended to care about the answer. All of it was garbage. I do love you. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. You don't get to say that word to me anymore. She stared at me, and I watched something change in her expression. The tears drying up, the jaw setting, the mask slipping. The real Brooke emerging from behind the performance. The Brooke who'd been plotting with my best friend while I worked to pay for her lifestyle. Fine. You want to do this? We'll do this. Her voice went hard. But you're going to regret it, Preston. I'll take everything. The house, the savings, half your retirement. My attorney will destroy you. You should call a lawyer. I kept my voice pleasant, almost helpful. You're going to need one. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to find the crack in my composure, the place where she could apply pressure. When she didn't find it, she grabbed the suitcase and slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the windows. I poured myself another cup of coffee, waited until I heard her car drive away, and called my father. Owen Mitchell arrived at 4 that afternoon, driving 3 hours from Richmond without complaint or hesitation. My father was 67 years old, retired from 40 years of family law, and still sharper than most attorneys half his age. He'd seen every kind of divorce imaginable, the ugly ones, the quiet ones, the ones that made headlines. He'd represented the wronged and occasionally, when he was younger and less principled, the ones doing the wronging. He found me on the back deck, staring at the tree line without seeing it. You're too calm, he said, settling into the chair beside me. That worries me. Would you prefer I punch a wall? I'd prefer you to be human. He accepted the beer I handed him. Talk to me. So I talked. I told him everything, the blackout, the voices, what I'd heard, what I'd recorded. I told him about standing in that dark hallway with my fists clenched, about the 12 seconds where I counted instead of acted. He listened without interrupting, his expression never changing. When I finished, he took a long pull from his beer and stared out at the yard. The recording is good, very good. But Preston, he turned to look at me directly. Don't let anger make you stupid. Make her regret this through strategy, not rage. I'm not angry. Bull. He said it mildly, like he was commenting on the weather. You're furious. You're just disciplined enough to put it in a box. That's good. That's how you win this. But don't pretend the box isn't there. It'll open on you when you least expect it if you do. I didn't answer. He was right, and we both knew it. You need representation, not some general practitioner who handles wills and traffic tickets, someone who specializes in this kind of war. You remember Diana Vance? The one you used to call the closer? She's the best in the state, meticulous, ruthless when she needs to be. And she has a particular dislike for cheaters, something about her first husband back in the day. He smiled thinly. Call her Monday, use my name. What about Garrett? Dad's eyebrows rose. What about him? His wife doesn't know. Vanessa. She thinks we're all friends. She thinks her husband is faithful. She invited us to their daughter's birthday party last month. I bought the kid a bicycle. And you're thinking about telling her? I'm thinking about what's right. Dad was quiet for a moment. That's admirable, Preston. Really. It's one of the things I've always respected about you. Your sense of honor. He leaned forward. But Vanessa is a card you play once, and then it's gone. Right now, you have leverage that nobody knows about. Garrett doesn't know what you recorded. Brooke doesn't know the extent of your evidence. They think they still have secrets. Information is power, son. Don't waste it on righteousness when patience will serve you better. I didn't like it, but I understood it. In war, you don't fire until you have the best shot. This was no different. Your mother, I said. When she left, did you want to tell everyone what she'd done? His jaw tightened. It was the closest I'd seen him to losing composure in years. Every day, for months. I wanted to take out an ad in the paper listing every motel she'd met him in. But you didn't. No, I waited. I was strategic. And when the divorce was final, I had my children, my dignity, and most of our assets. He looked at me. She had a tennis instructor with a drinking problem and a lot of regret. Sometimes the best revenge is being the one who came out ahead. I called my sister that evening. Tessa was 34, a forensic accountant, and the most stubbornly loyal person I'd ever known. When we were kids, she'd punched a boy twice her size for calling me a name I don't even remember anymore. She hadn't changed. Hey, Tess. Preston, you sound weird. What's wrong? I told her. The words came easier the second time, like the story was starting to calcify into something I could observe from a distance instead of something happening to me. The silence on the other end of the line was terrifying. Tess? I'm here. Her voice was tight, controlled. I recognized it. I'd sounded the same way the night before. Give me a minute. I waited. Okay, she said finally. I'm going to ask you one question, and I need you to answer honestly. Go ahead. Are you planning to do something stupid? Because I need to know if I should be driving to your house right now instead of having this conversation over the phone. No, I'm not going to do something stupid. Promise me. I promise. Good. I could hear her breathing slowly, deliberately, calming herself down. What do you need me to find? Everything. Bank records, credit cards, anything that shows how long this has been going on and how much money she spent on it. Any money she might have moved without my knowledge. Give me a week. Tessa, don't thank me. Just promise me you won't do anything stupid before I can help you do something smart. I almost smiled. I thought I already promised that. You did. But you're a man whose wife just cheated on him with his best friend, so I'm going to need you to promise it twice. I promise. I'll call you in a week. And Preston? Yeah? I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. She hung up before I could respond. Tessa wasn't good with emotional conversations, another thing we had in common. Diana Vance's office was on the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome and carefully curated minimalism. No family photos on the desk, no plants softening the edges. Just diplomas, awards, and a view of the city that said, I didn't get here by being gentle. She was in her 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of handshake that told you she'd never lost a fight she actually cared about winning. Your father speaks highly of you, she said, gesturing for me to sit. He said you'd be bringing evidence. I am. I placed my phone on her desk and played the recording. For 3 minutes, we sat in silence. Garrett's voice filled the room, then Brooks. The laughter, the plans. The casual cruelty of two people discussing their betrayal like it was nothing more than a scheduling problem. When it ended, Diana's expression hadn't changed, but something in her eyes had sharpened. Like a predator catching a scent. This is exceptional, she said. Time-stamped, clearly identifies both parties, admissions of duration, and intent to continue. She looked up at me. You have a prenuptial agreement? Yes, adultery clause. She gets nothing if she cheats. Who drafted it? My father. Diana's lips curved into something approaching a smile. Of course he did. Let me see it. I'd brought a copy. She read through it in silence, occasionally making notes on a legal pad with a fountain pen that probably cost more than my first car. This is ironclad, she said finally. Your father's work is thorough, detailed. Almost paranoid if you don't mind my saying so. He's been through his own divorce. Ah, that explains it. She tapped her pen against the desk. There's something here you may not have considered. The prenup protects assets acquired during the marriage, but it also means you can claim any marital funds she's moved without your knowledge. If she's been siphoning money, can you find out? I can subpoena records once we file, but it would be faster if you had someone who could do preliminary investigation. A forensic accountant, perhaps. My sister. Diana nodded approvingly. Family is useful in these situations. Have her send whatever she finds directly to me. Time is of the essence. We want to file before your wife has a chance to move assets or construct a narrative. Tessa delivered on Wednesday, 5 days after the blackout. She drove up from her apartment in the city, walked into my house without knocking, and dropped a folder 3 inches thick on the kitchen table. Her face told me everything before she said a word. How bad? I asked. Sit down. We spread the documents across the table like battle plans. Credit card statements showing 23 hotel stays over 18 months. The courtyard downtown, a boutique place near the airport, twice at a resort 3 hours away. Charges at jewelry stores, a necklace, earrings, a bracelet. Gifts that had never appeared in our house because they'd never been for me. Look at the dates, Tessa said, pointing. This one here, March 14th. You were in California for that contract meeting. She told me she was visiting her college roommate. And this one, June, 4th of July weekend. I remembered. I'd been at Fort Bragg for a reunion with my unit. Brooke had said she wanted to stay home, catch up on some work projects. There's more. Tessa's voice was gentle, which meant it was about to get worse. She pulled out phone records. I couldn't get the content. That would require subpoenas. But I got timestamps and frequency, calls and texts to Garrett's number. How many? In the past year, 1,247 texts, 203 calls. I let that number sink in. Over 1,000 times my wife had reached out to my best friend. 3 times a day on average. And I'd never noticed. I'd been too busy working, too busy trusting, too busy being the dependable idiot they were laughing about in my living room. And this, Tessa pulled out a bank statement. She opened a separate account 8 months ago. Little transfers from your joint savings, never more than a few hundred at a time. Irregular intervals so it wouldn't show up on any alerts. How much? $47,000. I stared at the number. She was building a runway. She was preparing to leave you. She just wanted to do it on her terms, with your money in her pocket. I thought about all the times she'd mentioned being stressed about finances, about needing to cut back on spending. She'd been stealing from our future while telling me we needed to be more careful. I'd even felt guilty about it. Thought maybe I was being irresponsible with the household budget. There's one more thing. Tessa handed me her phone. I went through the cloud account you both use for photos. I was looking for metadata, timestamps, anything that would show where she really was during her work trips. Photos filled the screen. Brooke and Garrett at a resort. Beach cabanas, sunset dinners. Her in a bikini I'd never seen. The metadata showed Cabo San Lucas. The date was during a work conference she'd supposedly attended alone. I'd been home that week, taking care of her mother, who'd had the flu. Picking up her prescriptions, making sure she ate, sleeping on the uncomfortable couch in the guest room so I could hear if she needed anything in the night. And this. Tessa swiped to the next image. A screenshot of a text conversation. Apparently, Brooke had wanted to preserve the memory. To look back on it fondly. Garrett. I love you more than I ever loved Vanessa. You're the only one. Brooke. We'll be together soon. Preston will never know what hit him. I set the phone down carefully. My hands were steady, but something inside me had gone very still and very cold. Are you okay? Tessa asked. No, I looked at her. But I'm going to be. Brooke spent the next 2 weeks at her sister Amanda's house, apparently telling everyone who would listen that I'd thrown her out without explanation, that I'd had some kind of breakdown, that she was the victim in all this. She texted me constantly. The messages cycled through every possible approach: apologies, accusations, threats, pleading. I didn't respond to any of them. Monday. I made a mistake, Preston. Please talk to me. Tuesday. You can't just ignore me forever. This is childish. Wednesday. I know you're hurt, but we can work through this. I know we can. Thursday. I'm starting to worry about you. This isn't like you. Friday. If you don't respond, I'll tell everyone you had some kind of breakdown. Is that what you want? Saturday. Please. I'm begging you. Just one conversation. Nothing. I gave her nothing. Every text she sent was evidence of her state of mind: desperate, manipulative, increasingly unhinged. Diana was building a file. On day 10, one of our mutual friends confronted me at a coffee shop. Jenna Holloway had known us both since Brooke and I started dating. She'd been a bridesmaid at our wedding. I still had the photo of her crying during the vows. She marched up to my table with righteous fury in her eyes, coffee sloshing from her cup. How could you just kick her out? She's devastated, Preston. She can barely eat. She's not sleeping. I've never seen her like this. Whatever happened, surely you can at least talk about it. Ask her who she was with when the lights went out. Jenna blinked. What? Last Friday, the blackout. Ask her who was in our living room when the power went out and what they were doing there. I stood up, leaving my coffee half finished. And while you're at it, ask her about Cabo. Cabo? She went to Cabo for a conference. Did she? I looked at Jenna. Really looked at her. The confusion, the conviction, the complete certainty that she knew the full story. Ask her who she really went with. Ask her about the bikini pictures on the beach. I walked away. I didn't look back, but I could imagine Jenna standing there with her phone already in her hand, texting Brooke, demanding answers. Let her narrative collapse on its own, my father had said. The truth is coming. All I had to do was wait. On day 15, I called Vanessa Webb. I'd thought about it for days. The ethics, the strategy, the simple human decency of it. She deserved to know. Whatever my father said about leverage and timing, Vanessa was an innocent person whose husband was planning to abandon her, and every day I let her remain ignorant felt like a betrayal of its own kind. We met at a coffee shop in a neighboring town, somewhere neither of us was likely to be recognized. She looked confused when she walked in, probably wondering why her husband's best friend wanted to meet without Garrett or Brooke present. Thanks for coming, I said. I know this is strange. Is everything okay? She sat down, fidgeting with her wedding ring. Garrett's been acting weird lately. Stressed about work, he says. Working late, constantly on his phone. She laughed nervously. I was actually going to ask if you'd noticed anything. This was harder than I'd expected. Looking at her face, open, trusting, worried about a husband who was planning to leave her for my wife. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. Photos, hotel receipts, the text screenshot. I laid them on the table between us, face up. I'm sorry, Vanessa. You deserve to know. I watched her face as she looked through the evidence. First, confusion. Why is Preston showing me pictures of Brooke at a hotel? Then recognition. Wait, is that Garrett's arm in the frame? Then the slow, terrible understanding that everything she'd believed about her life was a lie. When she got to the screenshot, I love you more than I ever loved Vanessa, she made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. How long? She whispered. 18 months. I found out the night of the blackout. They were in my house. She covered her face with her hands, and for a long moment she just breathed. When she looked up again, her eyes were red but dry. I found statements, she said. 6 months ago. Offshore accounts? He said it was tax planning, that his accountant had set it up, That I wouldn't understand the business side because real estate is complicated. She laughed bitterly. I believed him. I always believe him. How much? I don't know. Hundreds of thousands, maybe. He's been hiding real estate income for years. She looked at me, and something fierce had entered her expression. He was building an escape fund. For them. We sat in silence for a moment. Two people whose spouses had been planning a future together at our expense. Then Vanessa straightened in her chair, and something changed in her demeanor. What are you going to do? She asked. I've already filed. Diana Vance is handling my divorce. Vance? Vanessa's eyebrows rose. My cousin used her in her divorce 5 years ago. Took her husband apart piece by piece. He was a doctor, thought he was untouchable. He's still paying her alimony. She nodded slowly. Good choice. What about you? I'm going to call my attorney, and then… She stood up, gathered the documents, and looked at me with something that might have been respect. I think you and I should coordinate. If we're both going to burn them down, we might as well make sure the fire's hot enough to finish the job. I shook her hand. We had an alliance. Garrett was served at his office on day 18. I wasn't there, but I heard about it later. The process server walking past the receptionist like he owned the place, into the conference room where Garrett was meeting with his business partners, dropping the papers on the table in front of everyone. Divorce filing. Custody petition citing moral unfitness. Request for forensic accounting of all business assets and offshore holdings. His face apparently went white as paper. Dylan Pierce, the senior partner, the one who'd insisted on morality clauses in their operating agreement because he was a deacon at his church, asked what was going on. Garrett couldn't even answer. I got a text from an unknown number that evening. You did this. You ruined everything. This isn't over. I saved it without responding. Evidence. Brooke was served the next day at Amanda's house. I'd made sure the filing included a reference to the audio recording and the photographic evidence. I wanted her to know exactly how thorough I'd been. Her attorney called Diana within hours, his voice apparently shaking. Diana's response was brief. The prenup is clear. Your client violated the adultery clause. She gets nothing. We can do this quick and clean, or we can do it in court where the recording becomes public record. Your client's choice. Day 20. Brooke showed up at the house. I'd changed the locks the week before. One of the first things I'd done after she left. I was in the kitchen when I heard her car pull up, then her key failing in the lock, then her fist pounding on the door. Preston, let me in. This is my house too. I didn't respond. I know you're in there. We need to talk about this like adults. You can't just throw away 9 years because of one mistake. One mistake, 18 months of lies, 247 texts, $47,000 in stolen money. One mistake. Preston, please, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry, just let me explain. I picked up my phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. Hello. I need to report a trespassing incident. My estranged wife is attempting to enter my property after being asked to leave. Through the door, I could hear her screaming, crying, pleading. By the time the officers arrived, she was sitting on the porch steps, mascara streaked down her face, playing the victim for all it was worth. Sir, she says this is her home too, one of the officers said when I finally opened the door. We're in divorce proceedings. She moved out 3 weeks ago at my request. I've asked her multiple times not to come to the property. They looked at each other. One of them nodded. They escorted her to her car. I watched from the window as she drove away, still crying. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. The dominoes fell faster than I'd expected. Day 25. Garrett's business partners called an emergency meeting. Dylan Pierce, devout Christian and moral absolutist, had done some research after seeing those divorce papers. He'd found references to the affair, realized what Garrett had been doing. Their operating agreement had a morality clause. No affairs, no criminal behavior, Nothing that could damage the company's reputation. Dylan invoked it and initiated a forced buyout at reduced valuation. You can fight it, Garrett's attorney apparently told him. But that means litigation, which means discovery, which means every detail of your affair becomes part of the public record. Garrett didn't fight it. He couldn't afford to. Week 5. The mutual friends who'd taken Brooke's side began switching their allegiance as the truth trickled out. It happened slowly at first. A text here, a call there, then faster as the story spread. Mark Davidson, who'd been my racquetball partner for 6 years, called on a Tuesday night. I just heard, he said, his voice heavy. About Garrett, about everything. God, Preston, I can't believe I told Sarah to check on Brooke. Said you were probably overreacting to some small thing. You didn't know. I should have. You're not the overreacting type. If you threw her out, you had a reason. He exhaled. I feel like a fool. Tom Beckett, who'd been at our wedding and every birthday party since, showed up at my door with a bottle of scotch and an apology. I let Brooke cry on my wife's shoulder for 2 hours, he said. She told us you were having some kind of breakdown, that you needed help. I almost called your father to suggest intervention. He shook his head. I'm sorry, man. I should have called you first. Should have heard your side. It's fine. She was convincing. That's the thing, isn't it? She was. She's always been convincing. Makes you wonder what else she sold us over the years. I didn't have an answer for that. Neither did he. Jenna Holloway called me to apologize. She'd confronted Brooke about Cabo, and Brooke's stammering denials had told her everything she needed to know. I am so sorry, Preston. I had no idea. She was so convincing, and the way she described it. It's fine, Jenna. She's been convincing me for 1.5 years. Amanda kicked Brooke out. I heard about it through the grapevine. Amanda's husband had found out about the affair and put his foot down. I won't have someone who could do that living under my roof, he'd apparently said. It's disrespectful to our own marriage. Brooke was running out of places to go, running out of people willing to believe her story. And she was getting desperate. She showed up at my office, made it past the front desk somehow, probably told them she was my wife, that there was an emergency. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Mitchell, there's someone here to see you. She says she's your wife. I excused myself from the meeting and walked out to find Brooke standing in the lobby, looking wild-eyed and disheveled. A far cry from the polished marketing director she'd been 6 weeks ago. We need to talk, she said. Right now, in private. There's nothing to talk about. Please, Preston, her voice cracked. I'm losing everything. My job is gone. They found out about the divorce and there was this client meeting where I just couldn't hold it together, and they let me go. Amanda kicked me out. I'm staying in a motel and I can't afford more than another week. Security? I said, not raising my voice. The guard by the front desk looked up. This woman needs to be escorted out. Preston, don't do this. Ma'am. The guard stepped forward, professional and calm. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. She was still calling my name when the elevator doors closed behind her. Week 6. Garrett called. It was late, past 11. I was in bed, not sleeping, just lying there in the dark the way I did most nights now. When I saw his name on my screen, something cold settled in my stomach. I answered anyway, and I made sure to enable the voice recording. You happy now? His voice was slurred, drunk. You got what you wanted. Everything's destroyed. My kids won't talk to me. My partners are screwing me on the buyout. Vanessa's attorney is going through my accounts like a bloodhound. You destroyed your own life, Garrett. I just turned on the lights. Oh, that's rich, he laughed bitterly. Mr. Perfect Preston, Mr. Calm under pressure. You think you're so much better than me? I never slept with your wife. So yes, actually, I do. You want to know something funny? Something that'll really get you going? His voice dropped, turned mean. Brooke and I used to talk about you, about how oblivious you were, How easy it was to lie to you. She'd come to bed with you after she'd been with me and you never even suspected. I didn't respond. Just let him talk. We used to joke about your life insurance policy. All that military stress you carry around. Maybe one day you'd just check out early. Some guys do, you know? And then she'd be free and wealthy. We'd be together and you'd be gone and nobody would even question it. I stopped breathing. Not that we were going to do anything, he added quickly, some dim survival instinct recognizing he'd said too much. Just talk. Just joking around. But man, Preston, she really doesn't love you. She never did. You were always just a paycheck to her. I was recording. I always recorded now. Force of habit. Thanks for calling, Garrett, I said. Good luck with your divorce. I hung up and sat in the dark, listening to my own heartbeat. They'd joked about me dying. They'd fantasized about a world where I was gone, and they could have each other and my money. And that was supposed to be humor between lovers. I sent the recording to Diana the next morning. She called back within an hour. This isn't grounds for criminal charges, she said, but in terms of demonstrating character, establishing pattern of behavior, showing the court what kind of people we're dealing with, this is gold. Use it. With pleasure. That night, I had the nightmare for the first time. I was back in the hallway. The dark hallway, power out, rain hammering the windows. I could hear their voices from the living room, the laughing, the planning, the casual betrayal. But in the dream, I didn't retreat. I didn't record. I walked into the living room with my hands already forming fists, and I became the thing I'd trained myself not to be. I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat. The nightmare came back every few nights after that. Same scene. Same ending. Sometimes Brooke was crying in the dream, begging me to stop. Sometimes Garrett was on the floor, and I couldn't remember how he'd gotten there. I never told anyone about the nightmares. But I started leaving a light on in the hallway when I went to bed. And I made sure to count to 12 whenever I felt the box in my chest start to rattle. Brooke's attorney tried to challenge the prenup in week 7. She claimed she'd signed under duress, that my father had pressured her, that she hadn't understood what she was agreeing to, that she'd been young and naive and in love. Diana produced the original signing documentation, including the video. My father, paranoid even in happy times, had insisted on filming the signing. The footage showed Brooke reading every page, asking intelligent questions, laughing with me about how old-fashioned it all seemed. Her own attorney was present, nodding along, confirming she understood every clause. At the end, she'd kissed me and said, "This is just paperwork, babe. What matters is that I love you." The judge dismissed the challenge in less than 10 minutes. Mediation came 2 weeks later. Brooke arrived with her attorney, a man named Craig Lawton who looked like he'd aged 10 years since taking her case. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "My client is prepared to negotiate," Lawton said. "She recognizes that the prenup limits her options, but she's hoping to reach an amicable settlement that acknowledges her contributions to the marriage." "No," Diana interrupted. "There's no negotiation here. The prenup specifies that, in the case of adultery, the offending party forfeits all claims to marital assets. Your client committed adultery. The evidence is overwhelming. We're here as a courtesy, not a negotiation." Brooke leaned forward. "Preston, please. I have nothing. I can't afford an apartment. I lost my job because of all this. My family won't talk to me. You lost your job because you started crying in a client meeting and told them you were getting divorced because your husband was being unreasonable." I'd heard about that from Jenna. "The client was the CFO of a family values organization. They dropped your company the same day." Her face went red. "That's not fair." "You keep using that word." I felt tired, suddenly. Tired of her, tired of this, tired of everything. "Here's the deal. You take your personal belongings. I keep the house, the savings, the investments. No alimony. You sign today, and this ends clean. And if I don't? Then we go to trial. The recording becomes public record. The photos from Cabo become exhibits. The text messages get read into testimony. That lovely phone call from Garrett about my life insurance policy. That gets played for the jury. I met her eyes. Every detail of your affair becomes part of the permanent legal record. Your parents get to watch you be cross-examined about which hotels you preferred and what you did there. She was crying again. Real tears this time, I thought. The tears of someone who'd finally realized there were no more moves to make. I loved you, she said. I really did, at the beginning. At the beginning, I agreed, but not at the end. And honestly, Brooke, that's what matters. She signed. Garrett's divorce was messier. Vanessa's forensic accountant, a woman who'd apparently trained with the IRS, found the offshore accounts, found the hidden income, found enough financial irregularities that Garrett's attorney advised him to settle generously just to avoid criminal investigation. In the end, Vanessa got the house, 70% of the assets, and full custody of their children. Garrett's oldest daughter, 16, had found the screenshots and read every word. She'd texted him one message: "You destroyed our family for her. I never want to speak to you again." He moved into a rental apartment on the outskirts of town. Started drinking heavily, from what I heard. His business partners completed the buyout at 40 cents on the dollar. Vanessa called me a few weeks after her divorce was finalized. She sounded tired but steady, stronger than she'd been at that coffee shop. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for telling me. I know it wasn't easy. You deserve to know. Still, most people would have just handled their own side and left me in the dark." She paused. "Can I tell you something? About my daughter?" "Of course." She found the screenshots on my laptop. I'd left it open, stupid mistake. She read everything. Garrett's love letters to Brooke, the texts about leaving us, all of it. Vanessa's voice cracked slightly. She came to me after and asked why her father would say those things. Why he would call someone else the only one when he had us. I closed my eyes. This was the part of the story nobody talked about. The children, the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire of adult selfishness. What did you tell her? The truth. That her father made terrible choices. That those choices weren't her fault or mine. That love isn't always enough to make people good. Vanessa took a breath. She cried for 2 hours. Then she texted him that message. The one about never wanting to speak to him again. How is she now? Getting better. We're in family therapy. She's angry, mostly. Angry at him. Angry at herself for believing his lies. Angry that her childhood wasn't what she thought it was. A pause. She asked about you, actually. Asked if you were the one who caught them. What did you say? That you were a good man who found out something terrible and handled it with more honor than most people would. I could hear the sad smile in her voice. She said maybe she'd thank you someday, for giving her mom a chance to start over. We talked for a few more minutes. Logistics, mutual acquaintances, the small talk of people who shared a trauma. When we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about collateral damage. Garrett hadn't just betrayed his wife. He'd betrayed his children. He'd stolen something from them. Their faith in their father, their belief in their family, their sense of security. Those weren't things you could get back. Neither could he. Brooke tried to contact him after both divorces were finalized. He wouldn't take her calls. Apparently, when your affair partner abandons you at the first sign of consequences, the romance loses some of its shine. She ended up in a studio apartment across town. I heard she was working retail, waiting tables at night. The marketing director career was over. Her professional reputation hadn't survived the scandal. 3 months after my divorce was finalized, a letter arrived. Handwritten, 8 pages long, postmarked from a zip code I didn't recognize. I read it in my office, alone, with a glass of whiskey I didn't drink. Brooke wrote about how sorry she was, about how the affair had started. Loneliness, she said, feeling invisible in our marriage. She wrote about Garrett's charm, his attention, how he'd made her feel seen in a way I apparently hadn't. She wrote about the guilt she'd carried, the lies that had gotten easier the longer they continued, the way she'd convinced herself that she deserved happiness, even if it came at my expense. She wrote about loving me, about the early years, the life we'd built, the person she'd been before something in her broke. She wrote about regret. I finished the letter, read the last line. I hope someday you can forgive me, even if I know I don't deserve it. Then I put it in the paper shredder and watched it turn to confetti. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel much of anything. I just felt done. My father came to visit the week my divorce was finalized. We sat on the back deck with beers, watching the sun go down, not saying much. You handled this with more grace than most men could, he said eventually. I don't feel graceful. I feel empty. That's healing. He took a drink. The anger kept you full, gave you something to focus on, something to fight. Now you need to fill that space with something better. I thought about that. About the box I'd put my fury in, how it had served me, how it had kept me focused on the plan when I wanted to scream or break something or become the person in my nightmares. Did it ever go away? I asked. When Mom left? He was quiet for a long moment. The sun was halfway below the tree line now, painting the sky orange and pink. No, he said finally. But it got smaller, and eventually I didn't notice it most days. He looked at me. You'll get there. Just give it time. How long? Different for everyone. For me, it was about 3 years before I could hear her name without my jaw tightening. 4 years before I could see her at your graduations without wanting to walk out. He finished his beer. Now I just feel nothing. She's someone I used to know. Someone who made choices that hurt us, but she doesn't have power over me anymore. Do you regret how you handled it? The divorce? Not once. He met my eyes. I was strategic. I was patient. I didn't let anger make me stupid. And when it was over, I had my dignity, my children, and a life I could be proud of. She had a tennis instructor who left her for someone younger 2 years later. He smiled grimly. The arc of the universe doesn't always bend toward justice, Preston. Sometimes you have to help it along. We sat in silence as the sun finished setting. Then my father stood, clapped me on the shoulder and said, I'm proud of you, son, for what it's worth. It was worth a lot. A few weeks after that, I decided to renovate the house. Tessa helped. She came up on weekends with paint samples and opinions, and we worked through the rooms one by one. The master bedroom first. New paint, new furniture, new curtains. Then the living room, especially the couch where I'd found them that night. You're erasing her, Tessa said, watching me sand down a wall I was going to repaint. No, I said. I'm making space for whatever comes next. You always were the philosophical one. She handed me a new sheet of sandpaper. Mom would be proud, you know, of how you handled this. I didn't answer. Our mother was a complicated subject. She'd left when we were kids, and we'd spent years processing the abandonment before settling into a distant but civil relationship. She lived in California now with her third husband. We saw her at holidays sometimes. I called her, Tessa said, after I found out about Brooke. I wanted to ask her, I don't know, something. Why people cheat, maybe. What it feels like to be on that side. What did she say? That she was sorry. That she'd made terrible mistakes. That she hoped you wouldn't let Brooke's choices make you bitter the way Dad's bitterness had shaped him. Tessa shrugged. I told her you were handling it better than anyone could expect. Am I? Yeah, big brother. You are. She went back to painting. I went back to sanding. The box in my chest felt a little lighter than it had the day before. A week after we finished the renovations, Brooke's father called. Harold Lawson, a decent man who'd shaken my hand at the wedding and told me to take care of his little girl. Preston. His voice was rough, embarrassed. I wanted to apologize for my daughter, for what she did to you. You don't have anything to apologize for, Harold. I raised her, gave her everything. Her mother and we've been married 42 years, never even looked at anyone else. I thought we taught her better. He stopped, cleared his throat. I don't know where we went wrong. Some things aren't about how you were raised. Some things are just choices people make. Still, he sighed heavily. You were a good husband. Better than she deserved, it turns out. I just wanted you to know that her mother and we don't blame you. Not one bit. That means more than you know, Harold. Take care of yourself, son. He hung up before I could respond. It was a painful conversation. Probably more painful for him than for me. Watching your child become something you don't recognize has to be its own kind of heartbreak. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Garrett at a gas station. He looked like hell, 20 pounds heavier, clothes wrinkled, the kind of stubble that comes from not caring rather than from style. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Preston. His voice was rough. Didn't expect to see you. Garrett. He looked at my car, at my clothes, at whatever he could see of my life. You're doing well? I am. Good. He swallowed hard. You deserved better than what I... He stopped, shook his head. I don't even know what to say. I finished filling my tank, replaced the nozzle, and walked around to the driver's side. Garrett. He looked up. You were my best friend for 18 years. You were the best man at my wedding. I let that sit, and you threw all of it away. There's nothing left to say. I drove away without looking back. That night, I had dinner with Elise Warren. I'd met her 3 months earlier at a charity gala for veterans, a trauma surgeon who volunteered her surgical expertise for guys coming back with injuries. She'd walked up to me while I was trying to figure out how to politely escape and said, "You look like you'd rather be literally anywhere else." 3 hours of conversation later, she'd given me her card. I'd waited 2 weeks to call. When I finally did, she laughed and said, "I was starting to think you'd lost it. I wasn't sure if you were serious. I'm always serious. Ask anyone who's worked with me." A pause. But I'm also patient. Takes a while for some people to figure out what they want. 3 months of dinners, conversations, long walks through parks neither of us had visited before. She knew about my divorce. I told her early, not wanting to build something on omissions. She'd listened without judgment. People mess up, she'd said. Doesn't mean you're broken. Just means you picked wrong the first time. Now we sat across from each other at a corner table, wine between us, and she was telling me about a surgery that had gone wrong and then right, and then almost wrong again before she'd pulled off what she called a minor miracle of stubbornness. You love it, I said. The chaos. I love fixing things, she smiled. Putting broken pieces back together. Probably says something unflattering about my psychology. Or something admirable. Or that. She reached across the table and took my hand. You know what I love about you, Preston? My devastating good looks and sparkling personality? Your complete inability to lie. She squeezed my fingers. You're the most genuine person I've ever met. Even when you're hurting, you don't pretend you're not. You just carry it honestly. I thought about the box in my chest, the rage I'd never fully let go of, the nightmares that still came sometimes, less frequent now, but never quite gone. I'm not as honest as you think, I said. Yes, you are. You just don't know it yet. We finished dinner, walked to our cars in the cool evening air. She kissed me goodnight, a real kiss, not the careful early dating kind, and drove away with a wave. I sat in my car for a few minutes before starting the engine. Thought about everything it had taken to get here. The blackout, the voices in the dark, the 12 seconds of choice. 9 months ago, I'd stood in a dark hallway and listened to my life fall apart. Now I was building something new, something real, something that didn't depend on lies or settling or closing my eyes to the truth. The storm had passed, and I was still standing,